I trust that before long these dark clouds which have settled upon the imagination of this great continent, first by the sunlight of sanity and the warming rays of returning prosperity. Ladies and gentlemen, this election has been in this division a model of the way in which democratic institutions can be worked.
Three cheers for Winston Churchill. Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray! Got one there.
Out in the Atlantic, the weather improved. Here in a newsreel film, one of the most historic ever taken, is the answer to many. And down below, during the voyage, the Premier and the service chiefs in conference ranged the whole wide world of strategy, east and west. Hands the President a letter from the King. The two greatest leaders of the freedom-loving world are ready for the historic conference. The simplicity of the scene only underlines the tremendous implications of the meeting, which transcend the war itself. Captain Leach, commanding Prince of Wales, read the lesson. A declaration from two such men, freedom from fear and want must come. The meeting is over, the President has left.
I do not intend to be responsible for any suggestion that the war is won or that it will soon be over. That it will be won by us, I am sure. But how and when cannot be foreseen, still less foretold. By singleness of purpose, by steadfastness of conduct, by tenacity and endurance, such as we have so far displayed, by these, and only by these, can we discharge our duty to the future of the world and to the destiny of man.
Wearing the uniform of Colonel-in-Chief of the regiment, he was accompanied by Lieutenant General Stone, commanding, and as many of its RAF comrades as time allowed. General Auchinleck accompanied the Premier. The Premier's time was taken up with many important meetings and conferences back in Cairo, but he found a few minutes to let the captain. Its illustrious Colonel-in-Chief have ever been engaged in tougher battles and campaigns than those that have fallen to their lot in this war, who had pneumonia. When Mr. Churchill went to the palace with the regent, Archbishop Damaskinos, the square was filled with thousands of people waiting to hear the speeches. Were Mr. Macmillan and General Scobie. Field Marshal Sir Harold Alexander had travelled with the Prime Minister, whose visit to Greece followed closely on the conclusion of the Yalta Conference.
Churchill should have had the satisfaction of reviewing the British Army's victory parade in Berlin. There is this poetic justice in the secret of the polls being delayed for 3 weeks, that it enabled Winston Churchill to crown his war achievements by a review in Berlin itself. And at the conference, in contrast to Marshal Stalin, who knew exactly where he stood, Mr. Churchill had always the anxiety of an uncertain election at the back of his mind. Not that that affected his customary skill as a negotiator, but obviously it can't have been easy. He was, of course, accompanied by Mr. Eden and Mr. Attlee. It was a prudent thought, as it turns out, that Mr. Attlee should have doubled up on Mr. Churchill throughout the early stages of the conference. At the same time, it's a happy thought that Mr. Churchill is leader, or any doubt that he is one of the great men of history. With the 26th of July...
Excellent news, the Prime Minister is restored to health. An exclusive picture this. It was soon after Blanca and Tripoli that he went down with pneumonia. Now Winston Churchill is back again, and as we can see, he's looking his usual cheerful and confident self. The nation will continue to back his drive and his leadership to the limit.
Mr. Churchill from carrying out his prearranged plan for a countrywide election tour.
But I say, this is no time to mince about, to mince measures and fool around with weak governments. Therefore, I say that if you do not give...
And the Prime Minister goes on through cheering crowds of his supporters to Birmingham, accompanied by Mr. Geoffrey Lloyd, Minister of Information and candidate for the Ladywood Division. Of course, as an old campaigner, Mr. Churchill recognises that he has a stiff fight on his hands. He's put all his energy into this spectacular progress, which continued through the north and into Scotland. The old war horse, as Generalissimo Stalin called him, is certainly out on the war path in this election, which means so much to him.
"5 years ago, I promised you blood, toil, tears, and sweat. And your untiring response brought us, in the end, victory over Germany. Today, we still have tears. Not so many, thank God. But the conquest of Japan, hand in hand with our American allies, is a formidable undertaking which we must and will see through to the end. And we must still look forward, alas, to blood and sweat.
He himself was evidently fit and in the best of form. His speech here has naturally been given considerable prominence, with emphasis on his outline for a United States of Europe. Mr. Churchill, now back in Britain, will presumably be kept very busy as leader of the opposition. Today, Mr. Churchill went away to paint in the south of France. He had fought a strenuous campaign, and he took a well-deserved holiday before meeting President Truman and Marshal Stalin. The vast majority of New Yorkers, however, were perfectly well aware that Churchill's one great aim is to prevent war, and they gave him a great reception as he drove through the city. Rain was the only thing that spoilt the drive. Later, supported by Mr. Gray, at the Roosevelt estate at Hyde Park, New York, Winston Churchill recently went with his wife and Mrs. Roosevelt to pay tribute to the late President of the United States. The grave is a very simple one in the Hyde Park garden, and here Britain's ex-premier laid his wreath to the memory of one of the greatest men of our time. And as he stood there, Mr. Churchill must have been thinking of him not only as the great American war leader, but also as his close colleague and friend, FDR.